Am I the jerk for not visiting my parent in the hospital? For the record, I'm here to rant more than anything. My parents got a divorce when I, a 21-year-old female, was about 6. I have 4 significantly older siblings, so by this time most of my siblings were legal adults, all except for my sister Mary, a 31-year-old female, who was 15 or 16 at the time. Mary and I were supposed to spend a week at our mother's house and a week at our father's house, although she tended to not always actually go to my father's house for the full week. I mentioned this to express that I was practically an only child from about 8 years old onwards, as my siblings weren't really around. I have brittle bone disease, type 1, so the easier one, and spent much of my childhood at the hospital because of it. Now, I'm sure that my mother used to actually stay with me at the hospital when I was an infant, too little to be there on my own, but I don't have any memory of her actually staying there with me, ever. When Mary was still living with us, she would get her to drive me to the hospital. Afterwards, she would drop me off and give someone her number if it was a broken bone and tell me to figure it out if it was regular treatment. I stopped breaking bones as often as I got older. By the time I was 14, I hadn't had a broken bone in over a year, although I started to have really bad leg pain that we found out was bone cancer. My mother was never with me when I was in the hospital during this time. It was always my father that took me to treatments, and when I was hospitalized, not even he stayed with me much outside of being there when strictly, legally necessary. Osteosarcoma is an easy cancer, so I was likely to survive it, and I did, having been in remission for almost 5 years, but I still would have liked to be accompanied for it. My mother is sick now in the hospital. She has cancer herself, and it's much less treatable than it was for me, especially given her age. But I haven't visited her. My siblings are all incredibly angry about it, talking about how selfish it is to not go see the woman that raised you at the hospital. I don't know. She never went to see me when I had cancer, and I think it's unfair for me to be expected to see her. I don't feel guilty about it per se, but I feel like I should. You handled things appropriately. Ask your siblings where their anger is for all the time she left you alone in the hospital. Mothers are not inherently sacred. Those who neglect their children merit no special consideration. Take some time, think it through, and figure out what is best for you, and do only that. Am I the jerk for refusing to participate in a friend's fetish? I've been dating my current girlfriend for about 8 months. Early in the relationship, she introduced me to some friends of hers, a couple I'll call Fred and Ginger. Over time, as I got to know them, I learned that Fred and Ginger are into some pretty extreme BDSM. While I'm really uncomfortable with that whole scene, I don't want to judge or intrude on what consenting adults do amongst themselves. Also, Fred and Ginger never pushed anything on me or overshared. Occasionally, something about their lifestyle would come up in conversation, and I would simply politely listen, the same way I would treat any topic about which I had no knowledge or interest in. However, a little while ago, Fred and Ginger showed up to a hangout with a young woman. She was very quiet but seemed nice when I engaged her in conversation. She usually wouldn't speak until spoken to, and she gave short, vague answers to questions. When I finally asked Fred and Ginger who she was, they explained that she was their pet girl. When I expressed confusion, they explained what that meant, that she was effectively a full-time sex slave. I was really creeped out but let it go. However, over the weekend, we saw the 3 of them at a house party and I was shocked. The girl was wearing an incredibly revealing outfit comprised of leather straps, and they were leading her around on a leash. This was at a house party where everyone else was in normal street clothes and acting as if this was perfectly normal. It was surreal. For the first time, I mentioned to my girlfriend that this made me really uncomfortable. When I explained, she agreed that they probably went a little far, but that it was a private party and not in public. I still tried to be polite and, like everyone else, avoid acknowledging what was going on. However, 2 things happened that caused an argument. The first thing was that I tried to address the pet girl and say hello since we had met and spoken before. Fred snapped, "No, don't talk to her. She's not for talking," which seemed condescending and really irritated me. The second thing occurred when Fred and Ginger were separated. Fred said he had to go to the bathroom and asked me to hold the girl's leash while he did. I refused absolutely. He asked again and I responded, possibly a bit rudely, "I want no part of this." This started an argument that spun out of control where Fred and Ginger accused me of being judgmental, a bigot, and puritanical while I tried to defend myself. For my part, I definitely said some unkind and regrettable things as well. Unfortunately, my girlfriend found herself in the position of trying to referee the situation, which I do feel badly about. Ultimately, we left. In talking on the way home, after I explained my position, she said that she understood, but that I should have handled the situation better. However, ever since, Fred and Ginger have been blowing up her phone saying some pretty ugly things about me. I don't want her to feel like she's caught in the middle of a stupid fight, although I acknowledge that's exactly what has happened. She's asking me to apologize to them, but I feel like that would validate what they did and said and invalidate my position. I came to Reddit because I want the perspective of some neutral parties. Was I out of line here? Am I being unreasonable? Is there anything to be gained by swallowing my pride and apologizing? Am I the asshole here? Your post has been removed because it violates Rule 11. Posts involving changes to contact with partners, friends, or family aren't allowed here. If you're looking for a place to discuss these topics, try Aita Relationships. Remember, resubmitting without approval will lead to a ban. Am I the jerk for refusing to throw my neglectful sibling a birthday party? I, a 21-year-old female, am the youngest of 3 sisters. The eldest is Sarah, who is 30 years old, and the middle one is Melissa, a 24-year-old female. Growing up, I've always gotten along better with Sarah due to our similar interests and because she is a reliable and responsible person. Melissa, on the other hand, has no sense of responsibility or accountability. Melissa never helps with chores or household duties. For instance, we share a cat. While Sarah buys the supplies, Melissa and I take turns cleaning the litter box. However, Melissa frequently neglects her duty, leaving the litter box dirty for over 24 hours and forcing me to clean it. This pattern extends to other chores as well. Melissa once didn't clean her room for 4 months. As a result, I end up doing the majority of the housework, sometimes spending up to 6 hours a day cleaning, especially when guests are coming over. 2 months ago, Melissa and I threw a birthday party for our sister Sarah, and I bought Sarah an expensive gift. Melissa often jokes that I'm just a beggar and leech who is closer to Sarah because she buys me things and drives me places. The truth is, I'm just grateful to have a responsible sister like Sarah. Now Melissa's birthday is approaching, and Sarah wants us to throw her a party and buy her gifts. I told Sarah I'm not participating. She said I should be ashamed of myself and that I'm not being a real sister. My family seems to think my anger is just a sibling quarrel that will blow over, but I don't want to speak to Melissa until she changes her irresponsible ways. I understand this might make Melissa feel I'm being sycophantic and that I could be the asshole for refusing to celebrate her birthday, even though her behavior has been frustrating me. Maybe I should set aside my resentment for one day and try to repair our relationship. But I also don't see why I should celebrate someone who only brings me anger and frustration by dumping their responsibilities on me. At the same time, I know birthdays can be important, and refusing to celebrate hers could really hurt her feelings and damage our relationship further. I'm just not sure if I'm overreacting or if my feelings are justified. Ultimately, I'm torn. I want to support my sister, but I'm tired of carrying the burden of her irresponsibility. I know birthdays are important, but I also don't want to reward her bad behavior. I'm just not sure what the right thing to do is in this situation. Am I the asshole? It sounds like you're feeling really frustrated and taken for granted, especially with how much responsibility you're handling. It's understandable, given the situation, and it might be high time that you and Sarah unequivocally tell Melissa that her behavior is unacceptable. Maybe suggest a compromise where you help with her birthday, but also ask her to step up more with chores. Everyone pitching in equally and possibly hiring a cleaning service could be a simple solution to ease the tension. Am I the jerk for not sharing food I bought with my own money with some people in my orchestra after a massive dispute we had a few months ago? I, a 17-year-old male, am currently rehearsing for a summer concert at my school. The year 13 students, most of whom are 18 years old, have all left after finishing their A-levels but came back for the rehearsals. When they were here, 3 of them came into a silent studying room and began being loud. I asked them multiple times to stop, but under the guise of it being group work, they avoided any trouble for their rowdiness. I was then made the bad guy when I moved their stuff to another table in the room because I wanted to stay by the window. At the time, it was really hot, and the rooms at our school have no air conditioning. From my perspective, why did I have to move from where I was comfortable to accommodate inconsiderate people? They got mad, an argument broke out, and one of them even began to invade my personal space. The next day they came back to argue over the blinds of a window next to me being closed, claiming it made reading the screen on the laptop harder. Everyone I spoke to about this agrees it was a baseless reason to argue, as having the blinds open would impede their ability to read more than if they were closed. I said I knew it was about the day before, not about the blinds. They made comments about my family and tried to accuse me of being a predator because I talk to people in younger year groups, even though the only people I talk to in younger year groups are the siblings of close friends in my grade. They also tried to accuse me of racism, even though I am the same race as one of the people involved. Just as I was about to respond, I was asked to back down and show grace during exam season and drop it after they came instigating. I retorted by calling out the girl who said this for cheating on her boyfriend, saying she couldn't talk about grace and morals when she didn't have enough grace and morals to stay faithful. I then told the other one to worry about her boyfriend, who's been involved in shady business, before worrying about me. It got worse from there, with my words being twisted. Staff got involved, and I was given a verbal warning to not discuss it again, or I'd face exclusion. They said it was a large group against me, and there weren't enough people to corroborate my story, even though I gave them a list of witnesses. I asked my friends afterward if the staff investigating the incident spoke to them, and it was a unanimous negative. My guess is that because the teacher is openly friendly with them, they didn't investigate thoroughly. Meanwhile, lies about what I said continued to spread, but I had been silenced. I'm still not over what happened because of all the lies and how the teacher didn't even follow up with the people I named as witnesses. I offered to buy lunch for some of the people rehearsing with me, with the exception of those involved in the previous incident. Now I'm being accused of still being bitter and excluding them to make them feel guilty. Am I the asshole for not buying lunch for them? You're not obligated to buy lunch for people who haven't treated you well. Choosing to distance yourself from those who've wronged you isn't bitterness. It's a smart move. Right now, focusing on your rehearsals and maintaining positive relationships is probably the best course of action. Keep your head up, focus on your concert, and let the rest roll off your back. Am I the jerk for uninviting my friend to my wedding after an argument? I, female 24 years old, am getting married to my fiancé Micah, male 26 years old, in 2 months. I've been with my fiancé for 2 years, and other than normal couple arguments, things between us have been relatively good. My friend Justin, male 25 years old, has been one of my best friends since middle school. After graduating high school, we would always hang out and take small trips together. Justin has hung out with my fiancé and me many times. Recently, Justin has been displaying this aggressive, clingy behavior with me. He will constantly try to lean on me or hug me. He will constantly insert his own feelings into my personal business and get upset when I try to set boundaries with him. Justin will get angry and storm off in any direction, and when I try to talk about it, he will dismiss the situation. The most recent incident is when I told Justin I would be meeting with my future mother-in-law to talk about wedding plans. Justin started making evil mother-in-law jokes to me about it, which made me feel incredibly weird because my mother-in-law has always been incredibly kind to me. While I know these were just jokes, there are several jokes that he has made, whether it be about my fiancé, me, or my extended family, that just confuse and shock me. 2 weeks ago, after speaking to a friend, female 23 years old, she said I would have to talk to Justin about his behavior. When I did, I was incredibly angry and went off on him, telling him over and over how uncomfortable he's made me in the past few months, and that I cannot stand to be around him. I cannot stand his touchy behavior and his lack of understanding. He got upset and began to bring up that I've been taking things too seriously lately, and instead of playfully joking around with him like I used to, I take what he says literally, and it makes it awkward for him. I got even more upset and revoked his invite to the wedding. I feel like I'm the asshole for being too serious and upset over the situation. I haven't spoken to anyone about this interaction, and Justin hasn't spoken to me ever since. I feel bad for being so hard on him and not taking a kinder approach. Am I the asshole? You did nothing to deserve criticism. Justin's behavior is a huge red flag with his constant unwanted touching and inability to respect boundaries. He's acting creepy and jealous, which is causing unnecessary problems. If he can't take no for an answer and respect your space, he doesn't need to be at the wedding. Am I the jerk for leaving the restaurant with my kids while my parents were visiting? I've never had a great relationship with my father. I've never been able to have my own thoughts, feelings, or opinions. I've been called names for holding different beliefs, and overall it's been rough trying to figure out who I am as an adult. My mother and I have a better relationship, but she co-signs his behavior. She says, "You have to love people where they're at, and that's just the way he is." I moved to Oklahoma about 4 years ago. My parents live in Arizona. I have 5 children and do things differently than my parents. I don't discuss politics or religion with my father if I can help it. I can have those discussions with my mother because we're able to listen to each other. My father is a different story. I get called stupid, a dumbass, brainwashed, or worse. I do my best to avoid anything remotely political. Sometimes things that aren't political end up being political with him. My parents came to visit and last night was their last night in town. We went to dinner, and overall the visit was okay. We had a couple of small incidents, but I had kept my mouth shut and ignored them. While we were at dinner, we were on one of the safer topics with my father, which is movies and TV shows. I brought up the Interview with the Vampire series. Admittedly, I have not seen it but wanted to. My mother likes Interview with the Vampire, and I wanted to ask her if she had watched it. She's actually the one who got me into Anne Rice. Before my mother had a chance to answer, my father cut her off and said, "We aren't going to be watching that." I was a little confused and asked why. He said, in front of everyone in the restaurant and in front of my children, "Because it's a fuck show." I was shocked and said, "Dad." He said, "What?" He gestured to the restaurant behind him, then said, "I don't care who heard me, it's the truth." I said, "Well, I care, and I don't want that kind of language used around my children." To which he replied, "Oh, so your kids can run around saying, 'Oh my God,' but I can't say fuck." Similar interactions have become very nasty. I didn't want to make a scene. I had talked to my children about what they could and could not say in front of my parents. I also corrected them, and so had my parents anytime they said it in front of them. He then said, "If your kids can run around saying, 'Oh my God,' I don't see what the problem is with what I'm saying. It's a fuck show." I got up, took my children, and left. My mother called later and pretty much defended him. She said my children had been disrespectful and we were both in the wrong. She called me prideful and stubborn. She said that I could have a conversation with my father to try and resolve it. I laughed and told her to sit down with him and have a conversation with him about anything he deemed controversial and let me know how it went. She didn't have much to say after that. I'm feeling very conflicted, but this is not the first time he has done something like this. You are not in the wrong. Your mom is a hypocrite for holding you to a different standard than she holds your father. Walking out is not only acceptable but is also a perfectly polite way to respond to rude behavior from another person, particularly when that person has shown intent to continue their rude behavior. You may want to limit contact with them moving forward if this is how they behave. Thanks for watching. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications so you never miss a video. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist in the description.